Hi to those of you who are popping on and gathering in. I'm going to go ahead and start in. The theme for the week was healthy communication. Healthy communication with a focus on the listening portion of communication. Why is there a focus? Why am I focusing on the listening portion of communication? I'd love your input. Pop in, let me know why you think listening is important to focus on as we're talking about healthy communication. Why am I taking the time to do that? I will give your first reason right off the bat. One is that healthy communication is a pretty broad subject, can't quite be covered in a 15-minute live talk. So I'm just focusing on one aspect of it. It also, getting good at it, surprise, is not going to come from just talking about it, but getting out there in your lives and practicing it. So that's why I'm also only doing just a portion of working on the healthy communication with that focus on listening, because really a lot of it can't be covered in a live talk because it's about getting on the court and practicing it. But we are going to talk some tips and do some practicing here. Why else would focusing on the listening portion of communication be important to do? Let me know your feedback. Why do you think? What does it mean to you? One big, maybe obvious thing is that talking does not necessarily mean communicating effectively. Just let that one sink in there for a minute. Talking does not necessarily mean communicating effectively. We can be talking all day, but how's the communication really going? Are we getting each other? Are we just talking about the weather? Is that really communication about who we are and what's important? Other reasons that talking about listening is important when you're covering healthy communication, I mentioned this in the first video this week. It's a tough thing for us to do, to just shut our mouths and to listen. It's not modeled very well to us, and we're not good at it. I'm going to go into some of the reasons why in a little bit, but that's the other reason we're focusing on listening, because it really is the first step, first line of defense. When we're talking about healthy communication, listening is the first thing before talking. And talking will have to be a whole other call. Anyway, when you think about the people in your life who are good listeners, let me ask you this. Think about those people in your life who are good listeners. Do you like those people or dislike those people? People in your life that are good listeners, do you tend to like them or dislike them? I bet you like them. There's this quote from David Osberger. I looked it up. I always forget this guy, and I don't know why, because this quote is everything to me. This quote from David Osberger says, "Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable." That's right. When we are being listened to, we almost can't tell the difference between being loved, between receiving love from another person. It is a huge way that people receive love. Now, I'm curious from the rest of you, that's a very meaningful quote to me. I assume it's because one of my love languages, and that will be for another talk, maybe we can discuss that later, that love languages is not my concept. I believe that's Gary Chapman, but they're brilliant, they're pretty great. But one of my love languages is quality time with an emphasis on quality communication. So of course, for me, being loved means being heard, being listened to. But is that just me? Anybody else? Is that a natural response for everybody? Is that a human need? What does this mean to you? When you think about those people in your life that are important to you, do they hear you? Do they get you? Do they listen to you? Okay, So, listening is important. We get it. Help me with this already. Okay? Let's first talk about a couple things that get in the way of being a good listener. And another person mentioned this to me on my Facebook page. First is focus. Anytime we're distracted, we're thinking about our own to-do list, we're thinking about what we might respond or how we relate to it, we're not listening. We're not focused on what the other person is saying. We're in our own heads. We're thinking about us. We're not truly being with the other person. And that focus is a primary thing that gets in the way for people when they're trying to be good listeners. Wow. What could I possibly say about tuning up your focus? I'll give you guys one guess. Could it be practicing mindful meditation? Never heard that before. Yes, the more that we can tune up our own focus, if we are able to retrain our brains to focus on whatever is at hand, we will be more effective as listeners, less likely to get distracted. It can look as simple as 5 minutes a day, you guys. It can. Research shows 10 minutes a day, you can make changes in the brain after a certain period of time. Longer periods of time, those changes happen quicker. I'll let you do your own research on that. But yes, another plug for mindful practices and or meditation, because they're not always the same thing. They can go hand in hand, but they're not always the same thing. Staying in the here and now. I did share an article Tuesday. Tuesday is my article sharing day. I shared an article on Tuesday about mindful listening as a complement and supplement to active listening. So if you haven't seen that, go check that out on my page. The second thing that can get in the way of being a good listener is our own fear of not being heard. We can tend to rush to fill the space with our own words because we're worried that we won't be heard either. I like to say that when everyone is a good listener, we won't have this fear. But the reality is we can only control ourselves. Speaking up and reinforcing the boundary that we deserve to be heard too. That's a whole other topic. We might have to do another video about that speaking up portion of that healthy communication. I was talking with my mother about this earlier, and not making yourself wrong for what you need, because then speaking up doesn't come out so intensely. When you don't make yourself wrong for what you need, you're able to communicate that boundary with a lot more softness, a lot more palatability, and the boundary is still there. I did a video on healthy boundaries. So in that speaking up portion and that fear of being heard and asking for what you need, check that one out. See if that helps. And we'll come back to the listening portion that we are focusing on today. For right now, just be aware that not everyone's a great listener, and let's work on getting us better at it. So I've got a few more points, and then we'll wrap for today. Active listening takes effort. It is completely normal and expected that when you're doing it well, you might be tired at the end. I specifically schedule breaks when working between clientele because I am so plugged into them and what they are doing, feeling, being, that I take a moment, often 15 or longer of a break in between sessions, to rejuvenate, to come back to my own self so that I can be a fresh slate to then listen again, because it does take effort and energy. Now, I love it. So it's effort and energy that I adore. But recognize when you're learning something new, if you find it's exhausting, hey, you're learning a new skill. Normal for it to be trying a little bit. One of Stephen Covey's 7 success principles is seek first to understand and then to be understood. The quote that I shared from Stephen Covey was, "Most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply." I'm going to say that again for those of you who haven't heard it, because this is a gem. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Two different ways to break down this listening. Listening attentively and listening empathically. Listening attentively means paying attention to the words of what people are saying, what they're actually trying to get out of their mouths and communicate. You're paying attention to that. That's listening attentively and repeating it back to confirm you got it. If you know somebody in your life that does this, at least for me, for somebody who just loves quality communication, if anybody repeats back what I'm saying, I'm like, oh, you're getting it, or you're trying really hard to get it. You're really making an effort. You care. You care to hear me. It's a big deal to just repeat it back. It also helps clear up miscommunications, in addition to showing the other person that you're tracking, that you're listening attentively. Listening empathically is more along the lines of, how does that feel? What you're telling me, this story that you're sharing, what was that like for you? I want to know a little bit more, a little bit deeper, but what does that feel like? Listening empathically is where that understanding comes in. Now, understanding does not have to equal agreement. You don't have to agree, but you're just understanding, you're comprehending, you get it. It's landing, it's registering in your brain. You get what the other person means to convey. Okay, last piece I'm going to add to this listening attentively and listening empathically is a skill that I've shared with people before at some group sessions that I've taught. I love teaching this. I learned this in my coaching certification program. It is one of the first coaching skills I would be willing to bet that most programs teach. And it is in how to be an effective, active listener. So we're going to talk about acknowledgement and validation. For my coaching friends that are listening, and some therapists, you'll know what this is. Acknowledgement. If any of you have a particular challenge that happened to you, like you stubbed your toe, we'll probably use that as an example, or if you have anything that just kind of feels a little sucky right now, big or small, pop it into the comments and we can use some acknowledgement and validation around this so you guys can get a handle on what this is really like. Acknowledgement is literally just acknowledging what the other person said. I got it. I heard you. Here's what I heard. And repeating it back to them, mirroring it back to them. You can say it in your own words. You can check and say, hey, did I get that? Jessica tells me, I stubbed my toe and it hurts. Acknowledgement would be, oh, wow, Jessica, you stubbed your toe. That must hurt. I mean, it seems simple out of context. It's a little bit redundant. But when it flows into the validation and when you can get really artful at this, it's huge for people. Just acknowledging, I heard you, you stubbed your toe, there was pain. So you're repeating back the incident, the feeling, if that was expressed. I'm so exhausted. I didn't sleep last night. Oh, gosh, that must be tough when you didn't sleep last night. Just acknowledgement. Actually, that must be tough might be a little bit more of a validation piece. So the validation piece is the secondary portion when you're actually giving the person credit for feeling what they're feeling. You're saying it's okay to feel what you feel. It's normal to feel what you feel. Anybody in your position who had that happen to them would feel the same way. So, geez, Jessica, you stubbed your toe the other day, and that sounds like it was really painful for you. I can't imagine how that must have felt. Tell me more. Well, the tell me more part is extra credit. That's what really gets you into being a good listener, because that shows that you want a bit extra. But the validation is, yeah, I mean, as simple as it is the stubbing your toe, anybody who stubs their toe would be a little bit irritated right now. It sucks. It's a simple example. When you have a more meaningful challenge than stubbing the toe, that's when you can really be with people. You repeat back, acknowledge what they said, and then validate them for feeling the way that they feel. Anybody would feel like that in your situation. It's okay to feel like that. It's normal to have that feeling of da 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 when you had that situation happen to you. Acknowledgement and validation, I am sure it is Googleable. Try it out with people. Anyone who posts in the comments later after watching the replay, I will be happy to show examples of acknowledgement and validation in the comments. We can all play with it. Acknowledge and validate each other when we're popping in. That's all I've got for today. A little piece of healthy communication in focusing on the listening portion of it, which can be hard for a lot of us, and it's a skill though. So that's the good news. There's hope for the lot of us. It is a skill. Our brains are malleable. We can learn. Let me know what you find, and happy Thursday. Bye.